What? Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for another edition. Well, this time, the Orns observation. I was going to do a 10-minute take on Watford versus Hull City, but there's really not much to do a take on. It was a nil-nil result. And look, the season for Watford is, for all intents and purposes, over. But in another way, in some ways, the season's just beginning for Watford. Why? Because really, with the appointment of Tom Cleverley, permanent now, as the head coach, the interim tag has been taken off. It just really jumpstarts the season already. I think next season's already started as far as I'm concerned as a Watford supporter, and I couldn't be more delighted about this appointment. This is the appointment I had been calling for many, many, many weeks ever since Tom Cleverley impressed in the first couple of games of his run. I think it was after the Leeds game, which was the second game, I think, in charge after the nil-nil draw, a 1-0 win at Birmingham. Leeds, where Watford had a lead twice in that game. That was the game where I felt really that Tom Cleverley should be put in permanent charge of this Watford men's first team. And ever since then, I had been going over and over and over again here and elsewhere, really entreating the Watford front office that they had to do this. They had to sign this man, and they had to announce it really before the end of this season. I was saying, and I predicted that they would do just that. They would probably do it either before the game against Hull or before the game against Sunderland this weekend. And that's exactly what they've done. They did this yesterday. They announced it exactly 3 years to the day that Watford last got promoted to the Premier League. And there's no accident that they did it that way, because Tom Cleverley also happened to be in the side celebrating on that very day, exactly 3 years ago yesterday, when Watford defeated Millwall 1-0 at the Vic to get promoted, secure promotion to the Premier League. And the reason, of course, is with the mindset and the remit that Tom Cleverley now is charged with trying to get this club back into the Premier League once again. Now, look, this board has to now that they've made the appointment, and I'm really glad that they did. Thank you to them for doing that. And now that they've done that, they've got to stick with this manager. I mean, how many times have we sat here, you and I, and talked about the importance of continuity and the importance of having a manager that is going to guide the team, going to be part of the building block, the structure, the infrastructure, the foundation. It's so important to have someone at the helm and keep them there for the stated period of time, for continuity's sake, for development's sake, for consistency's sake, for stability's sake. It's so important to have stability at a club. And one of the ways you grow that is through the head coach at your football club. Tom Cleverley, it made perfect sense to do this. Tom Cleverley's been a part of the Watford furniture, if you will, for a number of years now. He's had two different spells here as a player. He retired as a player due to injury last season. He played just last season with a number of these Watford lads that he is now the head coach of. He's been a really good ambassador for this club. He has a steady leadership about him, not necessarily the loudest shouter in the room, as far as I can tell, but someone who's quiet, steady hand, and I'm sure he does get on to his players in the dressing room, but someone who's sharp, steady hand is needed at this time at Watford. I just thought that, and I've said this many times, I've just thought it would make no sense trying to chase after managers to bring them here, to have them learn the club, go through the whole 9 yards. I don't think this club at this time is in that kind of mode where they need that. This club now is at a point where it needs to have someone put its arms around it, someone who knows it already, someone who throws bouquets at this club, someone who's part and parcel of the club. That's what this club needs at this time. And it's Tom Cleverley, who I think is the right person at the right time in the right moment for this club. And so the club was smart. The front office and the owner was smart in getting Tom Cleverley in here. It was a no-brainer for me. Only one defeat in the 7 or so contests that Tom Cleverley has taken charge of at this Watford's men's first team. And it just made perfect sense. You had to keep him here. He knows the club well. He knows the city, the town of London, the town of Watford very well. Of course, he has a relationship with the fan base. And as I say, on a number of occasions, he's really been a good ambassador at this club. And the fact that he was the under 18s manager for a part of this season did not hurt either, did good things with them, brought them to the brink of the PDL Cup final, or they got to the semi final. Tom Cleverley engineered that, built a relationship. He's already got a relationship with a number of the Watford players, as I mentioned earlier. He played with some of them just last season. They obviously like him. I thought one of the key points during this stretch was TDB, another Tom Deli Bashiru, going on Watford FC's communications in an interview and saying that he hoped Cleverley was made the permanent manager, hoped that he would get the job. When he said that a few weeks ago, I knew then that they were definitely going to have him be the permanent manager here for the Watford men's first team. It makes perfect sense. And plus, you wouldn't put out an interview like that if you didn't already have an idea that you were going to make Tom Cleverley the permanent head coach. I mean, it just wouldn't happen. And Tom Deli Bashiru doesn't make those comments if a number of his other teammates aren't already also on board with the idea. Tom Cleverley, as the head coach, makes perfect sense, as I said. But Tom Deli Bashiru, I think, is a leader in that clubhouse as well. And I do think that some of the other players take a cue from him. He's a young man, but I also think he's somebody who has got a lot of maturity about him. And I think there are a number of players that the younger players that take a lead from TDB, and TDB is a young man himself. So this appointment makes perfect sense. I know I've said that many times now. I'm very happy about this. I'm very happy that the Watford front office made the announcement, get it out the way. Everybody knows what's what. The fan base has a positivity about it. There's going to be some optimism, a lot of optimism now heading into next season. No matter what happens these final two games, there'll always be one or two Watford supporters who will say, Tom Cleverley, there'll always be one or two of them. That's always going to happen. So you really can't make anything of that. But what you can make something of is that the majority of the Watford faithful are definitely, in my view, on board with this appointment. They are definitely on board with this appointment of Tom Cleverley. And we will see what happens. Now, as well as the remit of keeping him here beyond next season, even when things get a little bit rocky, because they will, even when things become a challenge, because they will, you have to now back up this permanent appointment of Tom Cleverley with some solid summer signings. Given your budget, given the debt situation, and given the fact that probably a number of your signings are going to be loan signings, they have to be judicious signings. Obviously, there are going to be some players who are here now who won't be here during the summer, and they'll be gone by the time the first game of the new season begins. But it's who you take out and who you leave in and who you bring in that are also going to be extremely important to the success of this football club in the men's first team. And of course, to the head coach, Tom Cleverley. It's so good to get that interim tag off of his name. And it will be really good in the summer if the Watford front office can really judiciously get the right players into this team, because that is going to be a big, big, big statement and a big factor in how well Watford do next season. Obviously, the remit for Tom Cleverley is going to be playoffs or promotion. And whichever order you think that might come in, or whichever order you think the likely, whatever they're aiming for, it's anyone's guess. But obviously, we all would like to see Watford in the Premier League. What I've always said is that stability is important, is that you build, you grow, and you start to elevate the team's fortunes and the club's fortunes through the foundations that you're laying out. And the proper way to lay out a foundation, as I said earlier, is stability, is continuity, is keeping the manager here for a couple of seasons at least, not chopping and changing, because you disrupt the chemistry, you disrupt the building process, and you disrupt the foundation. You don't change houses because you have some stormy weather or because you even have some ferocious winds. Now, of course, if a hurricane comes along and blows your house away, that's another story. But just because things get rocky, just because things get a little bit shaky, even if you have an earthquake, for heaven's sakes, and Lord knows we have enough of them out here in California, you don't change a house unless it's completely destroyed, obviously. So that tricky analogy goes toward football and the foundation that this club is building. So Watford Football Club now, there will be some rocky days, there will be some stormy weather next season. But what this front ownership, this front office and ownership have to do is keep Tom Cleverley in post and weather through these storms. And I get it, football's a reactive business. Football is a business that is results oriented. But I think football also needs to be foundation oriented. And if football can be foundation oriented where Watford FC are concerned, the club we love is concerned, then I do think that it bodes well for us. We do have to go through the ups and the downs. It happens. It happens in life. It certainly is not something that a football club should ever be exempt from. You learn a lot about yourself in moments when it's difficult. You learn less about yourself and about your club when you're in the highs and you're always going well and you're doing great things. That's easy street. Now, the real test of keeping Tom Cleverley here, bringing him on as the full-time head coach, is to keep him here at least a couple of seasons or even longer, because that for me would be a real remit and a real statement of intent, and also a statement that the club has finally changed its ways, come hell or high water. This has been the Orns observation.